Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Martine Brisson, and today I'm with Lori Carpenos, who is a licensed family therapist, family and marriage therapist, and also a three principal transformative coach as well, and also an author. Welcome, Lori.
Oh, thank you, Martine. Wonderful idea that you're putting out a message of hope for people. It's an interesting time, isn't it? Nothing that we ever would have imagined. And, when you asked me to do this and talk about how my understanding of the principles has helped me in this time that, we just don't know enough about. We just, we're in a sea of not knowing here. And so I reflected for a bit, like, I wonder how I would be handling this if I didn't know anything about the principles, if I had never listened to Sid Banks, if I hadn't, been teaching and sharing the principles since the mid 80s. So it's, when you're operating at one, I guess we would call it a level of consciousness, it's hard to know how you would be if you were at a lower level of consciousness. But I can tell you from my clients, as you said, I have a marriage and family therapy um, practice, a private practice. And that has always consisted almost from the beginning, because right after I obtained a license to practice, I was listening to Sid and really changed how I was taught in graduate school. So that, anyway, to make a long story short, I started noticing really the difference in my clients, those who have a deeper understanding and those who are new to the principles. They have been taking um, this event, I'll call it, the pandemic. They've been taking it in a wide range. And honestly, those who have immersed themselves more in this understanding, they are so much calmer about it. They're not entering into difficult situations with their partner. You know what happens, and especially as a marriage and family therapist, I see couples who are having difficult times together, and then to be quarantined together, that's quite challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their,
Yeah.
and they're trying to find enough computers for all the kids to be at school on different computers. So it's incredibly challenging for them. But honestly, those who have a deeper understanding, I can tell you for a fact, they take it more in their stride. Because that's one of the things you learn or you realize when you see that our experience is always coming from inside of us. It's coming from how we construct thoughts and how much we buy into it, how much we believe in it. Consciousness is going to make it all look real no matter what we think. But the beauty is that we can feel when we're doing ourselves a disjustice with our own thinking, when we're like clobbering ourselves with our own thinking. So, we're to me, it's so hopeful, not just what I'm seeing as I drive, I'm for the most part, I've been home now for 9 weeks. I'm very lucky that I can bring my practice from my office to the screen. So I've been seeing people telehealth screen, and but I still drive to get to a park, to take walks, to be out in nature, and I still drive to go to the grocery store. And I see signs. And by the way, for people who are listening, I'm living in Connecticut, which is pretty close to New York, where one of the epicenters was. And so driving, I see these beautiful signs on lawns, on front doors with big hearts. I just put out a blog recently I captured a photograph while I was online at the grocery store, Trader Joe's, my local Trader Joe's, which I think, there's such a good feeling in that store, even before this happened, that, they've got a really great corporate culture from at least what I've witnessed. So I'm standing in line and one of the employees had marked off 6 feet with yellow tape and a saying on top of each of those strips.
Wow.
Like, celebrate our healthcare workers, celebrate our food service people, celebrate our warehouse workers, celebrate our taxi drivers. And I'm realizing as I'm walking closer to the front of the store that these are people that have always helped us, been in our lives, but who really stops and thinks about it?
Mm-hmm.
We take so much for granted. And to me, this is a wake-up call. I mean, I feel awful that people are sick and people have lost lives. But I also see it as an enormous wake-up call for humanity. And we're now, on a whole, more in touch with how much we need one another, that we really are all one energy here. And we are giving and taking constantly from everybody is part of our lives. So there's been a lot of beautiful awakenings. I mean, we also know about how pollution has decreased and the oceans are coming back. Somebody said there was a bird that came back. I think it was in China that they hadn't seen a herd for many, many, many years. So it's really, we're so fortunate. And I feel particularly fortunate because I was exposed to the principles, and it's made an enormous difference in my life, in my level of anxiety, and being okay with not knowing what is coming next. There's no way. We just really, the mind or our brain is so accustomed to predicting
Yes.
what's going to happen next. And that's really when we get ourselves in trouble, because how can we know? We make it up. We're making it up.
We made up all kinds of future. We're going to go on vacation. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But we never knew, really.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you brought that up, Martine, because you and I met on the Peru retreat with Jack Pransky. And so I had this retreat scheduled in the Dominican Republic. And literally 2 days before boarding the plane in March, we heard that you really should not be traveling unless it's an emergency. So I had to postpone it, We hope we can go in November, but we'll see. We're going to be safe first. That's the most important thing.
I'm going to the retreat with Eckhart Tolle in October. It hasn't been canceled yet.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Well, that might be a good sign, I guess. We'll see.
Maybe he knows something we don't. But yeah, and we're talking about the three principles. I think the beauty of the three principles is that we can always go deeper. You can always have insight. It's not because you've seen it once. It just goes deeper, and you can see it differently all the time. Now it's endless, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I was just in an online course. I think I might have mentioned this to you with Bill Pettit.
Yeah, I was on the same course.
Oh, you were in that course. Yeah, there were so many of us, and I wasn't able to make a lot of them live because they were in the middle of my workday. But I love listening to the um, repeats, to the recordings. And so my point about it was that, what was my point about it? Oh, about deepening. That, I had, because it was required reading for this course to read Second Chance again. It had been a very long time since I read Second Chance. I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. When I first read it in 1985 or 86, it didn't register as anything other than an interesting story. It was an interesting story to me, but I never registered like there are such gems in this book. And here I am all these years later. And I know what Dr. Pettit meant when he said he thought Sid wrote another edition to the book. Like you say, the understanding deepens to where you could pick up the same book that's talking about spiritual theosophy. It's more than a philosophy. It's really spiritual facts. You could pick that up, over the course of years, and it will speak to you in a whole new way that you hadn't picked up. I don't know. I think, it has to do with the level of consciousness that we're listening and reading at. It's fascinating to me. And that's also why a lot of people my age in my profession, they're burned out. They're burned out even well before my age. And I don't get burned out at all because I don't know, it's just always so interesting to hear people's stories and hear how they take that as absolute reality, as an absolute truth, and to be able to show them that that's just the illusion that you see when you're at that level of consciousness. And then they start to realize, and they could all relate to the fact that, maybe the couple has had a fight one night and in the morning, they can't even remember what the fight was about because they're in a whole different space by that time, a whole different state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy then for people to see how to not take their scary thoughts so seriously, how to not fall prey to the fearful thinking, the future thinking, going back into the past during this pandemic. People are saying, oh, if only I knew this was coming, I would have done this XYZ, but the only place we can live life is in the current moment, in the present. And, Sid just, that sounded like a good idea to me, but by understanding how the principles are bringing an experience of what we're viewing or what's in front of us, it's bringing that experience through us. Then I realized, no, this really is moment to moment that we are living here. Even when we are thinking about the past, we're,
It's only an idea of the past, anyway.
Yeah, it's an idea of the past, exactly. We're creating this image of what happened in the past. And, I'll talk to my brother. We were raised by the same parents, and his idea of our childhood was so different than mine. It's an idea of the past, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Lori, for your time and your understanding, because what folks don't know is that Lori was scheduled to speak to us last week. but because of a family emergency, we had to reschedule it, and she was very understanding. So thank you very much, Lori.
Oh, thank you, Martine. Thank you for doing this. It's wonderful of you.
And if people want to talk to you or find you, where can they find you?
My website is the number three,
Mhm. Yeah,
threeprinciplestherapy.com.
easy.
And
It's easy.
I'll say one more thing, that I direct so many people to Sid's work all the time, but that's really the reason that Christine Heath and I wrote The Secret of Love, because it brings what Sid spoke of to a more practical level. We speak, we bring in our client stories, and the stories of a lot of Three Principles practitioners are also in there. And so it makes it a little more practical if anybody has difficulty understanding what Sid is pointing to in his books. Pick up The Secret of Love, unlock the mystery, unleash the magic. Yeah.
I will put a little picture or link to the
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Amazon link to the book. Yeah, that's
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
well. Have a good day, and thank you very much for your time, Lori.
You too, Martine. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.